Imagine waiting decades for a simple acknowledgement of your sacrifices, years of silent battles with forms, bureaucracy, and forgotten promises, only to have it torn apart in seconds by someone too young to understand. How would that feel? For Raymond Holt, a 78-year-old Marine veteran, that nightmare became reality. "Sir, this check doesn't look standard. The paper feels off. And honestly, are you sure it's real? Can you believe it?" That's what the young teller snapped at him. No hello, no respect, just a cold, suspicious glare for a man who'd given so much. Holt didn't yell, didn't argue. He just stood there, stunned, as she fed his long-awaited Treasury check into the shredder without a flicker of hesitation. But hold on, 5 minutes later, the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury stormed through the door, and what unfolded next left the entire bank speechless. Welcome to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where we dive into tales of compassion, resilience, and justice. Let's uncover what really happened that day. Picture Brookdale, Missouri, a sleepy little town where life moves at its own gentle pace. Can't you just see it? The sun creeping up slowly, painting the sky with soft pinks and oranges, while traffic lights blink lazily into the night, waiting for someone, anyone, to pass by. Every Saturday, like clockwork, the same 6 pickup trucks rumble through downtown, a comforting rhythm in a place where folks still wave across the street with warm smiles. The diner shuts its doors at 3 sharp, and names are as familiar as the cracks in the sidewalk. It's the kind of town where a man like Raymond Holt could slip into the background, his incredible story tucked quietly behind a life of routine. But oh, what a story he carried. At 78, Holt called a modest second-floor apartment above an old barber shop home. No fancy elevator, just a creaky wooden staircase he climbed every day, his legs remembering each step like an old friend. He didn't ask for much, did he? A stovetop kettle whistled for his morning coffee, a radio crackled with gospel hymns and weather updates, and a dusty shoebox sat on a shelf, stuffed with yellowed letters he hadn't opened in years, each one a whisper from a past he rarely spoke of. Then, last week, everything changed. An envelope arrived from the United States Treasury, its crisp edges heavy with promise. Inside wasn't just a check, it was a lifeline. After decades of fighting through red tape, silence, and bureaucracy, here was retroactive disability compensation from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Payment for wounds that never healed, not the kind you bandage up, but the kind that settle deep in your bones, aching quietly day after day. The amount? Substantial. Enough to patch the roof that leaked every fall, dripping water into pots scattered across his floor. Maybe even enough to visit his daughter in Oregon, if his knees could bear the journey. Can you imagine what that meant to him? But when Holt opened it, he didn't grin or cheer. No, he just stared at that piece of paper, its weight sinking into his soul. Then, with the steady discipline he'd honed loading supply trucks in Da Nang, he folded it carefully, slipped it into his jacket pocket, and set out the next morning for Cedar River Credit Union, the same bank he'd trusted for nearly 40 years. 2 blocks he walked, turning right at the courthouse, his boots scuffing the pavement as the morning sun poured through the bank's tall windows. Inside, it was all so familiar, the hum of fluorescent lights, the faint musty scent of old carpet, the quiet buzz of waiting. He took a number, sat down, and let the sunlight rest on his worn boots and the soft brim of his tan cap. No military pins or patches for Holt, just a plain canvas hat. Why advertise what his steady stride already said? When his number flashed, he stood without a rush and approached the counter. "Good morning," he said, his voice calm as ever. "I'd like to deposit this check." The teller, Lindsay Foster, early 20s, bright eyes, polished nails, offered a smile that felt more practiced than real. She took the check silently, glanced at it, and, wait, what was that? Her eyebrows twitched. She flipped it over, held it up to the light, slid it under a little ultraviolet scanner. Then her fingers froze above the keyboard, hovering like she'd seen a ghost. "This is a very large amount," she said, her voice tight with suspicion. Holt nodded once. "It's from the Treasury." Disability compensation, approved 2 months ago. Did she hear him? Lindsay didn't answer, just started typing fast, her eyes flicking between screens, confusion creasing her face. The paper stock, strange, she muttered. And the routing number, it's not our usual format. Holt stayed patient. It's government issued, he said. Came directly from the VA. But she didn't even look up, just kept tapping away. Sir, she finally said, her tone sharp, do you have any other form of verification? Holt reached into his wallet, steady as always, and slid over his VA ID, his Missouri driver's license, and the Treasury award letter. No begging, no fuss, just the facts of a life spent serving. Lindsay barely glanced at them before leaning back, lips pressed tight. Bank policy, she declared. We're trained to flag instruments that raise concern. She reached for the phone, protocol, right? But then, oh no, her hand stopped, swung toward the shredder instead. No need to escalate, she mumbled. If it's not valid, we can't process it. Holt blinked, shock flickering across his weathered face. What are you doing? He asked. I'm sorry, sir. This check raises too many red flags, she shot back. You haven't verified anything, he pressed, urgency creeping into his calm voice. I've seen enough, she replied, a mix of certainty and unease in her tone. And then, unbelievable, she slid the check into the shredder. It whirred, rattled, and in seconds, it was gone, shredded into confetti right before his eyes. The silence that followed, oh, it was heavy. Not the kind you hear in banks or battlefields, but the kind that screams when something sacred is lost forever. Holt didn't yell or pound the counter. He just stood there, hands at his sides, staring at the shredder where a piece of his life had vanished. That was a United States Treasury check, he said at last, his voice steady but thick with meaning. It was valid and irreplaceable. Lindsay crossed her arms, unmoved. If you believe that, sir, I suggest contacting the issuer. They can reissue it. And if they don't, she shrugged, that's not my department. Can you fathom the nerve? Behind Holt, the line went quiet. Some folks buried their noses in their phones, others stared at the floor. No one spoke up, not a word. Because what happened wasn't loud or flashy, it was a quiet wound most wouldn't notice. But someone did. Outside, the wind tugged at the flag by the entrance, the same flag Holt had saluted as a young Marine, ankle broken, rifle jammed in the rain. Now, he turned silently, pushed the door open, and stepped into the sunlight, the shredded check weighing on his chest like a reopened scar. His steps slowed, just a little, but oh, that was enough. Lindsay didn't know it, nor did anyone in that lobby, but this man wasn't finished, not by a mile. Holt didn't storm out or glare back at the counter. He walked out steady, shoulders square, hands in his pockets, hiding the hurt deep inside. Across the street sat a tiny park, a lone bench, a maple tree dropping leaves, and a perfect view of the bank's glass windows. He crossed over with that silent grace only combat and time could teach, sat down, and pulled out a beat-up flip phone, patched with tape and grit. Few numbers were stored inside, why need more, but one stood out, JC. He pressed call. One ring, two, then, Colton. James, Holt said, it's me. A pause, then a sharp, Ray, what's wrong? Holt's breath was even. They shredded it. They what? Colton snapped. The Treasury check. VA disability payout. She ran it through a shredder. No questions, no verification, just suspicion and bank policy. Another pause, then, you're telling me a teller destroyed a United States Treasury instrument? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Holt replied. Colton's voice turned icy. Where are you? Outside the branch. Cedar River Credit Union, Brookdale location. I'll handle it, Colton said. Stay where you are. Click, the line went dead. Holt set the phone on his knee and waited, eyes fixed on the bank. Inside, Lindsay sat rigid, her heart pounding. Had she messed up? Something felt off the moment Holt left. Her manager, Gerald Price, loomed over her. "You did what?" "I shredded it," she said. "It didn't pass verification protocols. The routing number was odd, the watermark felt wrong. Policy says, you didn't call me." Gerald cut in. "You didn't escalate." "I followed the handbook," she insisted. He rubbed his temples. "Lindsay, a Treasury check. It could have been fake. It could have been real." She had no reply. Then, bam, the glass doors flew open. 4 figures strode in, black suits, crisp ties, federal badges gleaming. No fuss, just raw authority. A tall woman stepped up. "Branch Manager Gerald Price?" "Yes," he stammered. "Special Agent Rivera, Office of the Inspector General, U.S. Treasury. This is Agent Moss, Office of the Controller of the Currency. We're auditing this branch, effective immediately." Gerald gaped. "Wait, what?" "We've been alerted to the destruction of a government-issued payment to a veteran," Rivera said, unflinching. "That's a priority investigation under federal statute." Agents fanned out, one to the surveillance, one to the tellers. Moss zeroed in on Lindsay. "You are Lindsay Foster?" She nodded, throat dry. "You'll come with me now." "I didn't do anything illegal," she protested. "That's what we're here to determine," Moss replied. Across the street, Holt heard engines. 2 dark sedans rolled up, unmarked, government plates. A man stepped out, tall, gray-templed, sharp-eyed, James Colton, Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, in slacks and a windbreaker with a subtle Treasury seal. He spotted Holt, walked over, and sat beside him, no handshake needed. "You okay?" Colton asked. "They moved fast," Holt said. "I made one call." Colton's voice softened. "I still remember Basra, the convoy, the RPG, your voice through the smoke. You saved me, Ray." Leaves swirled around their boots in silence. "You didn't have to come yourself," Holt said. "Yes, I did," Colton replied. "They treat us like we're disposable, like service ends when we get home." "Not on my watch." Holt's jaw tightened. Colton stood. "I'll be back. We're fixing this." He marched into the bank like a man on a mission. Inside, Lindsay sat in an interview room, hands clenched. Moss set a recorder down. "Are you aware that destroying a verified Treasury check is a federal offense under Title 18? "I didn't know it was real," she gasped. "Did you verify it?" "No, alert your supervisor." "No, scan the security strip." "No," Moss leaned in. "You assumed, Miss Foster. And now a Marine's compensation is gone, the kind of mistake that ends careers." Outside, Gerald Price babbled to Colton. "Sir, I had no idea, save it," Colton snapped. "Where's the shredder log?" "Every unit logs use," Gerald said. "We'll pull it, and your surveillance. Then we'll talk retraining and why a hero was treated like a criminal here." Holt didn't stay for the rest. He rose from the bench and walked away, not in anger, but with purpose. Some men fight with patience, reaching higher when the system fails. And in the days after, Brookdale buzzed with his story, a veteran wronged, a friend who fought back, and a bank that learned respect the hard way. Inside Cedar River Credit Union, time didn't just slow, it stretched, thick and heavy, like molasses dripping from a spoon. Can you imagine it? The usual hum of transactions, that comforting rhythm of clicking keyboards and soft chatter, faded into an eerie hush. Phones that rang incessantly with trivial questions fell silent, as if holding their breath. Tellers froze mid-scan, their fingers trembling above the keys, eyes wide with unspoken questions. Even the coffee machine, half full and usually gurgling like an old friend, hissed to a stop, as if it, too, sensed something sacred had stormed into the room. What was happening? Why did everything feel so wrong? Agent Rivera stood at the heart of the lobby, her presence a quiet thunder. Branch operations are now frozen, she declared, her voice slicing through the stillness with a precision that left no room for doubt. No transactions, no communication, no external access until this audit is complete. Behind her, 2 agents darted through the back office like shadows, swift and relentless, gathering transaction logs, staff rosters, and the damning time-stamped secrets of the shredder. They moved without a word. Did they even need to speak? Their purpose was clear, and it weighed on the air like a storm about to break. Gerald Price, the branch manager, stood before his office door, a crumbling sentinel guarding a fortress already lost. "You can't just barge in here without notice," he protested, his voice straining to muster confidence, but oh, how it cracked. Sweat glistened on his brow, his hands twitching like a man who knew the battle was over before it began. Who were these people to unravel his world so effortlessly? Agent Moss didn't even lift his eyes from the document scanner. Federal Regulation 18 U.S.C. Section 471 covers fraudulent interference with Treasury-issued instruments, he said flatly, as if reciting the day's weather. "You don't need notice for that, Mr. Price." The law in his words was a hammer, striking down Gerald's defiance with cold, unyielding truth. Rivera stepped closer, her gaze a steel trap. "You can either hand over the documents voluntarily, or we'll request a subpoena. Either way, we're walking out with them." It wasn't a threat, it was a promise, delivered with the calm of someone who'd already won. Gerald swallowed hard, his throat a desert, and stepped aside, defeated. And just like that, can you believe it, 38 years of quiet banking routine unraveled, thread by fragile thread, all because of a few names, a few choices, and one veteran who wouldn't raise his voice. How could one man's silence carry such weight? In a cramped side office, Lindsay Foster sat across from Agent Moss, her once crisp name tag now tilting like her unraveling composure. Her fingers trembled in her lap, could she steady them if she tried? "I followed the guidebook," she whispered, her voice so faint it might have been a plea to herself. Moss glanced at a printed policy sheet, his face a mask of neutrality. Section 12B, any government-issued check over $10,000 requires immediate escalation to branch management for review and verification via Treasury's secure line. Did you do that? His question was a spotlight, and she shrank beneath it. She hesitated, her mind racing back to that moment. No, she admitted at last, the word a jagged stone in her throat. Had she even thought twice? Moss leaned back, his eyes piercing. "Did you attempt to verify the identification of the payee?" "I looked at the ID. It matched," she said, clinging to that small defense like a lifeline. "Then why shred it?" Moss's voice was soft, but oh, how it cut. Lindsay stared at the table, shame burning her cheeks. "I didn't like the way he looked at me," she murmured, barely audible. Moss raised an eyebrow, gentle but unrelenting. "How was that?" "Like he'd seen things," she blurted, her voice trembling with the weight of it. "And like he knew I didn't believe him." The room fell silent, a void swallowing her confession. "Did it ever occur to you," Moss said slowly, each word deliberate, "that maybe he had?" His question hung there, not to punish, but to awaken, a quiet call to see beyond her own fear. Could she have missed something so profound? Outside, across the street, the park bench sat unchanged, worn slats, rusted bolts, a quiet refuge beneath a swaying maple tree. Raymond Holt hadn't moved, not once. His hat brim rested low over his eyes, his arms folded neatly across his chest, a statue carved from patience. He wasn't watching the bank, not really. He was waiting, with a stillness that spoke of battles fought and survived. Hadn't he seen worse than this? Wasn't this just another test of endurance for a soldier who'd crouched beyond the tree-line, trusting the path would clear? Behind him, the town of Brookdale rolled on, blissfully blind to the drama tearing through their little branch. Cars hummed by, their drivers lost in their own worlds. A boy on a bicycle tossed newspapers with a carefree laugh. Did anyone notice the old man in the plain coat? He sat so still, he might have been part of the bench, invisible to a world too busy to care. Or was he? Then, a sound. A low hum, tires crunching on pavement, shattering the quiet. A second black SUV rolled up beside the park, its presence a jolt to the senses. This wasn't the Treasury agent's ride, no, this was something more. The door swung open, and out stepped a tall man, late 50s, clad in a simple navy windbreaker. No tie, no insignia, but every inch of him screamed authority. James Colton, Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Treasury. What was he doing here? Why now? He didn't glance around, didn't falter. He crossed the street with the stride of a man who'd never tasted defeat, and wasn't about to start. Holt looked up, just for a moment, and their eyes met. A nod passed between them, small, silent, but loaded with history. Was that all they needed? Colton stepped into the bank, the glass doors parting like they knew who he was. Silence crashed down like a wave. Can you feel it? Even Agent Rivera straightened, her composure tightening in his shadow. Gerald Price took one shaky step forward, then froze. Should he speak? Should he run? He didn't know. Colton moved with slow, deliberate grace toward the teller line, each step echoing louder than it had any right to in that hollow space. He passed the counters, the offices, and stopped dead center in the lobby, turning to face them all. His voice wasn't loud, oh, but it didn't need to be. Let me be clear, he said, calm, crisp, and quiet, yet it rang like a bell. When you shred a U.S. Treasury check issued to a retired Marine, you are not protecting the system. He scanned the room, his gaze ablade. You are breaking it. A teller shifted behind the counter, her breath catching. No one else dared breathe. You are not stopping fraud. Colton pressed on, his words steady but burning. You are telling an entire generation of Americans, those who fought, who bled, who waited for their government to keep its promise, that they are expendable. He stepped closer to the teller line, his presence towering. And when that happens, it's not just bad customer service. It's not just ignorance. It's betrayal, not only of protocol, but of trust. Lindsay, tucked beyond the glass, heard every syllable, her heart pounding like a drum. Could she escape the truth crashing down? Colton's voice dropped, deep and raw. Today, this branch didn't just mishandle a check. You mishandled a man, a soldier, a citizen. And worse, you mishandled his dignity. He turned to Gerald, eyes blazing. This isn't about policy anymore. This is about accountability. Gerald's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The room was thick with silence, not forced, but earned, a reverence for the weight of what had been said. Colton held the moment, then nodded to Rivera. Finish the audit, he said simply, and walked out, no threats, no fanfare, just the quiet power of a man who knew his words were enough. Outside, Holt rose as Colton approached, slow and steady. You didn't have to do all that, he said, his voice soft with humility. Yes, Colton replied, firm but warm, I did. They didn't say more, why would they? Colton rested a hand on Holt's shoulder, a fleeting bond, then turned back to the SUV, leaving Holt to the quiet. Inside, the bank staff stood frozen, the only sound the slow churn of an old printer spitting out evidence, page by page, truth by truth. They'd underestimated a man because of his age, his silence, the medals he didn't flaunt but kept hidden away. But Raymond Holt. He wasn't invisible anymore, not to them, not to anyone. That evening, after the last agent packed up, after the lobby settled into an unnatural calm, after the glass doors slid shut, Holt walked home. No parade, no cameras, just the soft thud of his boots on the sidewalk and the rustle of October leaves dancing around him like a gentle goodbye. Did the breeze know what he'd endured? The next morning, his phone buzzed, same battered flip phone, same name flashing, J.C. Ray. Colton's voice came through, softer now, almost tender. Just wanted you to hear it from me directly. Holt sat at his kitchen table, sunlight spilling through the curtains like liquid gold. Go on, he said, steady as ever. It's done. Colton said. Full compensation's been direct deposited, verified, logged, expedited. You should see it already. Holt's reply was a quiet, heartfelt thank you. There's more. Colton added, a spark in his tone. You'll get an official letter from the Treasury office, apology included. And a supplemental support grant. Consider it overdue recognition for what we failed to do years ago. Holt paused, brow creasing. I didn't ask for any of that. I know. Colton said, a smile threading his words. That's exactly why you're getting it. Then, softer still, I'm proud to know you, Ray. Always have been. The call ended, and Holt sat there, hands clasped over the table's edge. The money was nice, sure, but that call. That was closure, respect without fuss or flash. And for a man like him, wasn't that everything? By week's end, Lindsay Foster was suspended, her badge surrendered, her chair empty. She couldn't meet Holt's gaze again, could she? Gerald Price faced a compliance review board in a wrinkled suit, his title stripped away. The bank brought in a quiet man from St. Louis, fewer words, more listening. A change long overdue. The policy manuals. Rewritten. A new line graced the first page, service is not just transactional. It's personal. And sometimes, sacred. Small words, massive meaning. Days later, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived at Holt's door, hand-delivered by a man with a Veterans Affairs Community Outreach pin gleaming bright. Inside, an invitation, Mr. Raymond Holt, you are hereby invited as guest of honor at the Brookdale Veterans Recognition Ceremony, November 11th at City Square. Your service and recent trials have shown us dignity, sacrifice, perseverance. We'd be honored to honor you. Signed with deep respect. Holt read it, folded it, tucked it beside his discharge papers and a faded photo of his unit in Iraq. He didn't need a stage, did he, or applause? He knew what mattered. He skipped the ceremony but hit the diner, ordering coffee and pie. The waitress smiled, whispering, someone else covered it, sir. A quiet gift, perfect. Word spread through Brookdale, slowly, naturally. A mechanic nodded at Holt on Main Street. A woman held the post office door longer. A kid at the grocery store looked up from his phone and said, thank you, sir. No fanfare, just a town waking up to a man they'd missed. But here's what they didn't see, me. Arthur Jennings, night shift security guard at Cedar River for 15 years. I saw it all. I watched Lindsay shred that check, saw Holt's face, steady, unflinching, hoping for better. I saw the suits, the audit, the silence that fell like a judge's gavel. I didn't speak, not from apathy, but awe at something bigger unfolding. People ask me, why didn't he fight? Why no lawsuit, no scene? I say, he didn't have to. A man like Holt, with that stillness? The world notices, eventually. Justice came quiet, no sirens, just a call, agents crossing the floor, a deputy secretary speaking truth under fluorescent lights, shredding a soldier's check shreds trust. That hit me harder than any memo. You don't need medals for respect, parades for worth. Sometimes, it's one old man, one plain coat, one untold story, almost lost, but not quite. Holt never chased the spotlight, just what he'd earned. And when the world tried to erase him, he didn't yell. He stood, waited, watched the system remember. No ceremony, just a salute from above, a check restored to a man who never needed it to know his value. But for us? A wake-up call. Never underestimate the quiet ones, the steady hands, the histories you can't grasp, especially under a plane cap that doesn't blink. This story hits hard, it's a gut punch to anyone who values respect and dignity. I'm furious that Raymond Holt, a 78-year-old Marine, was humiliated over a government check. It's not just one teller's mistake, it's a systemic failure that spits on veteran sacrifices. These heroes deserve more than hollow praise, they need action and accountability. I believe we've got to fight for a society where kindness isn't optional, where bureaucracy doesn't shred someone's worth. It's personal for me, veterans like Holt built the freedoms we take for granted, and we're letting them down. This isn't about politics, it's about humanity. We owe them dignity, not disdain. Let's demand better, for Holt, for every veteran, for the soul of this nation. Indifference isn't an option anymore. Kindness finds a way, in the stillest corners. Not every hero seeks praise, some just ensure no one goes hungry today. And that can change everything. Forget this tale, and history fades. Subscribe to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where justice shines, kindness endures, and quiet heroism lives forever.